I never thought I would hear my father's voice again, especially not at 3 in the morning, broken and desperate. The same man who disowned me 5 years ago for becoming a professional photographer, calling my career filthy and disgusting, now begged for $126,000 to save the family construction business. His golden child brother Marcus had gambled away the company's equipment fund at underground poker games. The irony burned deep as I realized my filthy photography business now earned more than their entire family construction empire ever did. My name is Levi Henderson, and I grew up in the kind of suburban Denver neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. Our house sat on Maple Street, a 2-story colonial, with a perfectly manicured lawn that my father Robert maintained with military precision every Saturday morning. The Henderson Construction Company had been his life's work since 1987, built from nothing into a respectable local business that employed 12 people and handled residential projects throughout the Denver metro area. Dad was the kind of man who measured success in concrete terms, literal concrete. He believed in tangible things you could touch, build, and see. His hands were permanently stained with dirt and calluses, badges of honor he wore proudly. Mom, Sarah, worked part-time as a school secretary but spent most of her energy managing our household and trying to keep peace between Dad's iron will and his 2 very different sons. Marcus was 3 years older than me, and everything Dad wanted in a son. 6 feet 2 inches tall with broad shoulders, perfect for swinging a hammer. He could read blueprints before he could properly read books. Dad's eyes would light up whenever Marcus talked about joining the business after high school. The plan was always crystal clear. Marcus would inherit Henderson Construction and carry on the family legacy. Then there was me. At 16, I discovered photography during a high school journalism class taught by Mrs. Rodriguez. She handed me an old Canon camera and sent us out to document daily life around school. The moment I looked through that viewfinder and captured the way afternoon sunlight streamed through the gymnasium windows, creating patterns on the worn wooden floor, something clicked inside me deeper than any camera shutter. I spent every free moment after that, learning about composition, lighting, and storytelling through images. I would wake up before dawn to photograph sunrise over the Rocky Mountains, stay up late editing pictures on our family computer, and spend my lunch money on photography magazines. My bedroom walls became a gallery of black and white prints, showing the hidden beauty I found in ordinary moments around our neighborhood. Dad's reaction was immediate and harsh. Photography isn't real work, Levi. It's a hobby, not a career. Real men build things that matter. He would confiscate my camera equipment when my grades slipped even slightly and lecture me about the importance of practical skills during dinner every night. The phrase, starving artist, became his favorite weapon whenever I mentioned my growing passion. During my senior year of high school, I secretly applied to several prestigious art schools and photography programs. I spent months crafting the perfect portfolio, writing essays about my artistic vision, and dreaming about studying under master photographers. Colorado Institute of Art, Art Institute of Colorado, and even some out-of-state programs all seemed within reach when my portfolio kept winning local contests. But college application season came and went without a single acceptance letter arriving in our mailbox. I was devastated and confused. My grades were solid, my portfolio was strong, and my teachers had written glowing recommendation letters. I convinced myself I wasn't good enough and reluctantly enrolled at University of Colorado Boulder to study business management, hoping to eventually convince Dad to modernize Henderson Construction's marketing and client relations. 4 years of business school dragged by while I continued photographing weddings and events on weekends, building a portfolio that grew stronger with each shoot. Local magazines started publishing my work, and I won several regional photography competitions. But Dad remained unmoved. "That's nice, son, but when are you going to get serious about real work?" Everything changed during my final semester, when Mom called me into her sewing room, tears streaming down her face. Her hands shook as she pulled a manila envelope from behind her sewing machine. Inside were acceptance letters from every photography program I had applied to 5 years earlier. Full scholarships, partial scholarships, and personal notes from admissions directors praising my exceptional artistic vision and technical mastery. Dad had intercepted every single letter and hidden them from me. The confrontation that followed shook our house to its foundation. Dad admitted he had been throwing away my acceptance letters because he wasn't going to watch his son waste his life on nonsense. He claimed he was protecting me from inevitable failure and disappointment. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. 5 years of my life had been stolen based on his narrow definition of success. Graduation day arrived in May with all the tension of a brewing thunderstorm. I walked across the stage with my business degree, but my heart was set on a completely different path. The photography equipment I had been accumulating for years filled 2 large cases in my bedroom, and my portfolio had grown into something I knew could support a professional career. The explosion happened during what Mom had hoped would be a celebratory family dinner. She had prepared my favorite meal, grilled steaks, mashed potatoes, and her famous green bean casserole. The dining room table was set with her best china, and she had even bought a congratulations cake from the bakery downtown. "So, Levi," Dad began, cutting into his steak with sharp, deliberate motions. "Now that you have a real degree, we can start talking about your position at Henderson Construction. I'm thinking you could handle our client relations and help us expand into commercial projects." I set down my fork and took a deep breath. "Dad, I appreciate everything you've built with the company, but I've decided to pursue photography professionally." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's knife and fork stopped moving. Mom's eyes darted nervously between us. Marcus looked up from his plate with a smirk that suggested he had been expecting this moment for years. "Absolutely not." Dad's voice was low and dangerous. "I did not pay for 4 years of college so you could waste your education on that filthy hobby. Photography isn't filthy, Dad. It's art. It's storytelling. It's a legitimate career that I'm passionate about and good at." Dad's face turned red as he slammed his fist on the table, making the china rattle. "It's a perverted profession for degenerates who can't handle real work. You think taking pictures of people is going to pay your bills? You think it's going to build you a future? You're delusional." The words hit like physical blows. Marcus laughed openly, while Mom stared at her plate, unable or unwilling to defend me. The family I had hoped would eventually understand and support my dreams was revealing its true nature. "I've already booked several weddings for this summer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have paying clients who value my work. This isn't some fantasy, Dad. It's a real business plan." "A business plan?" Dad stood up, his chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. "Let me give you a real business plan. You have 2 choices. Join Henderson Construction as a full partner with benefits and a guaranteed future, or get out of my house and never come back. I will not support this nonsense, and I will not watch you destroy your life chasing rainbows." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Robert, please. He's our son. A son who respects his family would make the right choice," Marcus added, his tone dripping with false concern. "Come on, Levi. Stop being selfish and think about what's best for everyone." I looked around the table at these 3 people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. Dad's face was set in granite determination. Marcus wore an expression of smug superiority. Mom looked broken, caught between loyalty to her husband and love for her son. "I choose photography," I said simply. Dad's response was swift and brutal. "Then you are no longer my son. Pack your things and be out of this house by tomorrow morning. And don't expect any help from me ever again." As I headed upstairs to pack, I heard Dad on the phone with someone, his voice carrying clearly through the thin walls of our old house. "Yes, this is Robert Henderson. I need to schedule an appointment to change my will immediately. I'm removing my younger son from all family documents and inheritance plans. And I need to discuss something else with you about his business prospects in this community." The conversation continued, but I had heard enough. Not only was Dad disowning me financially, but he was actively planning to sabotage my professional opportunities in Denver. The man who had raised me, who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework, was now treating me like an enemy to be destroyed. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. My photography equipment, clothes, books, and the few personal items that mattered to me. Mom stood in my doorway as I loaded my car, tears streaming down her face, but she never said goodbye. The last image I have of my childhood home is Dad standing at the living room window, arms crossed, watching me drive away without a trace of emotion on his face. The studio apartment I rented in downtown Boulder was 600 square feet of possibility and terror. $800 a month took most of my savings, but it was mine. No one could tell me what career to pursue or judge my dreams as filthy. The space came furnished with a futon, a small table, and a kitchenette that barely qualified as functional. I set up a makeshift darkroom in the bathroom and used the living area as my office and portfolio display space. The first months were brutal. I had graduated with $4,000 in savings and a credit card with a $5,000 limit. Every expense had to be calculated and justified. Grocery shopping meant buying generic brands and planning meals around whatever was on sale. I learned to love ramen noodles in ways I never thought possible. My professional photography business started with wedding gigs booked through social media and word-of-mouth referrals from college friends. Saturday weddings paid between $300 and $800, depending on the package and location. I shot everything: outdoor ceremonies in the mountains, intimate chapel services, elaborate receptions at country clubs, and budget celebrations in church fellowship halls. Weeknights, I worked at a coffee shop called Mountain Grounds near the University of Colorado campus. The overnight shift paid $12 an hour plus tips, and the quiet hours between midnight and 6 a.m. gave me time to edit photos on my laptop. The owner, a former photographer named Tony, let me display my work on the walls and occasionally recommended me to customers looking for professional photography services. The loneliness was the hardest part. Holidays were especially difficult when social media showed endless pictures of family gatherings, birthday celebrations, and casual Sunday dinners that I would never be part of again. Christmas morning in my studio apartment, eating leftover Chinese takeout while editing wedding photos from the night before, felt like the lowest point of my entire life. But slowly, steadily, my business grew. Clients started requesting specific shots they had seen in my portfolio. Brides began asking friends who had photographed their weddings, and my name came up consistently. I developed a reputation for capturing candid, emotional moments that traditional wedding photographers often missed. My breakthrough came 8 months after leaving home, when Mountain Life magazine contacted me about photographing a feature story on Colorado's adventure tourism industry. The assignment paid $1,500 and required 2 weeks of hiking, climbing, and camping throughout the state to capture images of outdoor enthusiasts exploring everything from 14ers to hidden hot springs. That assignment changed everything. The magazine loved my work so much, they offered me a monthly retainer to provide outdoor adventure photography for their website and social media accounts. Suddenly, I had steady income and credibility in a niche market that valued artistic vision over traditional commercial photography. During that first magazine shoot, I met Jennifer Walsh, a marketing executive for an outdoor gear company who was coordinating promotional activities with the magazine. She was smart, ambitious, and understood business in ways that complemented my artistic abilities. Our professional relationship quickly developed into friendship and eventually romance. Jennifer saw potential in my work that I had never considered. "You're not just a wedding photographer anymore, Levi," she told me over dinner at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. "You're developing a brand around outdoor lifestyle photography that could be huge in Colorado's tourism and adventure sports market." Together, we created Mountain Light Photography as a limited liability company. Jennifer helped me develop a business plan, marketing strategy, and professional website that showcased my best work in organized galleries. We targeted outdoor gear companies, tourism boards, adventure travel companies, and luxury mountain resorts that needed high-quality images for their marketing materials. The business grew faster than I had ever imagined possible. Within a year, I was booking corporate clients who paid $3,000 to $5,000 for weekend shoots. My Instagram account grew to 50,000 followers, and companies started reaching out to me directly for collaboration opportunities. But success came with an unexpected discovery that shattered my growing confidence. Jennifer and I were at a networking event for Colorado tourism businesses when I overheard 2 men discussing a recent project. One mentioned having to find a new photographer at the last minute because the original choice had been deemed unreliable. "Yeah, his own father called to warn us," the other man replied. "Said the kid was mentally unstable and couldn't be trusted with important events. Saved us a lot of potential headaches." My blood ran cold as I realized they were talking about me. Over the following weeks, I discovered that several wedding clients had canceled mysteriously. Corporate gigs had fallen through without explanation, and opportunities I thought were confirmed had evaporated. Dad had been systematically contacting my potential clients, using his reputation as a respected local businessman to destroy my professional credibility before I could establish it. The betrayal cut even deeper than his original disownment. It was one thing to disapprove of my career choice and refuse to support me. It was another thing entirely to actively sabotage my attempts to succeed independently. He wasn't just cutting me off from family money. He was trying to ensure I would fail completely and be forced to come crawling back to Henderson Construction. But instead of destroying me, Dad's sabotage made me more determined than ever to succeed. If he wanted to play dirty, I would simply have to work harder and smarter than he ever imagined possible. Jennifer's marketing expertise became my secret weapon against Dad's sabotage campaign. Instead of trying to fight his whisper campaign directly, we pivoted my business model toward clients outside his sphere of influence. While Dad knew local wedding planners and small business owners, he had no connections in the high-end corporate photography market that was exploding throughout Colorado's Front Range. We're going to position you as the premium outdoor lifestyle photographer in the Rocky Mountain region, Jennifer explained during one of our strategy sessions. Corporate clients don't care about local gossip. They care about portfolio quality, professional reputation, and results. We targeted outdoor gear companies like Patagonia, REI, and local Colorado brands that needed authentic adventure photography for their marketing campaigns. Tourism boards for mountain towns wanted images that captured the essence of outdoor recreation in the Rockies. Luxury resorts and wedding venues in Aspen, Vail, and Steamboat Springs needed photographers who understood how to work in challenging mountain environments. The transformation was remarkable. Instead of competing for $300 wedding gigs with dozens of other local photographers, I was booking exclusive corporate contracts worth $10,000 to $15,000 each. Major outdoor gear companies flew me to locations throughout the West to photograph their products in action. Tourism boards sent me on week-long assignments to capture the best of what Colorado offered outdoor enthusiasts. My Instagram following exploded as I posted behind-the-scenes content from these high-profile shoots. Images of sunrise over frozen lakes, rock climbers scaling impossible walls, and mountain bikers racing through autumn aspen groves resonated with outdoor enthusiasts across the country. Followers grew from 50,000 to over 200,000 within 18 months. The financial transformation was equally dramatic. My second year in business, Mountain Light Photography grossed $150,000. Year 3 brought in $280,000. By year 4, I was approaching $400,000 in annual revenue with a team of 3 employees and a professional studio space in Boulder's Arts District. Success felt surreal after years of Dad's predictions about my inevitable failure. I bought a house in the Boulder foothills with panoramic mountain views, ironically choosing a contemporary design that required no traditional construction work. The home's clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows were perfect for displaying large-format prints of my best photography work. Jennifer and I got engaged during a weekend climbing trip in Joshua Tree National Park. I proposed at sunrise from the summit of a formation we had climbed together, with the Mojave Desert stretching endlessly below us. She said yes, and we started planning a wedding that would showcase everything we had learned about creating perfect moments through photography and marketing. Professional recognition followed financial success. Colorado Photography Association named me Outdoor Photographer of the Year. Several of my images were selected for gallery exhibitions in Denver and Boulder. Magazine covers featured my work regularly, and other photographers started reaching out for mentorship and collaboration opportunities. But the most satisfying moment came at a high-profile charity gala in downtown Denver that I had been hired to photograph. The event attracted Colorado's business and political elite, including construction company owners, real estate developers, and tourism industry leaders. As I worked the room capturing candid moments between speeches and auction presentations, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. 2 prominent Denver businessmen were discussing recent projects when one mentioned Henderson Construction. "You know, Robert Henderson has that photographer son who's doing really well," the first man said. Robert was telling me they're business partners now, And the kid's success has really helped Henderson Construction land some upscale residential projects. The second man nodded knowingly. Smart move, combining traditional construction with high-end marketing photography. No wonder they're booking more luxury custom homes lately. I stood there, camera in hand, listening to these men discuss how Dad was taking credit for my success and using my reputation to enhance his own business prospects. The same man who had called my career filthy and perverted was now bragging about his photographer son to potential clients, implying we were business partners and that my achievements somehow reflected his wisdom and support. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. For 5 years, I had built my success despite his active sabotage and complete lack of support. Every client I had booked, every dollar I had earned, every professional milestone I had achieved had happened in spite of his efforts to destroy my career. And now he was claiming partial credit for accomplishments that existed solely because I had refused to let his cruelty defeat me. Standing in that ballroom, surrounded by Colorado's most successful business leaders, I realized I had not just survived Dad's rejection, I had thrived beyond anything he could have imagined when he threw me out of the family. My filthy career had made me more successful and financially secure than Henderson Construction had ever been. The phone call that changed everything came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I was in my home office, editing photos from a weekend shoot in Moab, when my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in 5 years. Dad's contact information was still in my phone, labeled simply as Robert Henderson, though I had never expected to see it illuminate my screen again. Levi, this is your father. His voice was barely recognizable, rough and broken in a way that suggested he had been crying. I know I have no right to call you, but I need to talk to you about something urgent. My first instinct was to hang up immediately. 5 years of silence, sabotage, and cruelty couldn't be erased by one desperate phone call. But something in his tone made me hesitate. This wasn't the commanding, authoritative voice that had dominated my childhood. This was the voice of a broken man facing something he couldn't control or intimidate into submission. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone cold and professional. "It's Marcus," Dad continued, his words coming in rushed, panicked bursts. "He's been stealing money from the company. A lot of money. We're facing bankruptcy, and there are criminal charges pending. I don't know who else to turn to." The story that emerged over the next hour was devastating in its stupidity and scope. Marcus, the golden child who was supposed to inherit and expand Henderson Construction, had been living a double life for over 2 years. While Dad believed his older son was focused on growing the business and learning advanced construction management, Marcus had actually been gambling away everything the company had worked 35 years to build. Underground poker games had started as occasional entertainment after work. Marcus told Dad he was attending professional development seminars and networking events when he was actually sitting at card tables in warehouse basements, betting thousands of dollars on hands of Texas Hold'em. Sports betting had escalated from casual weekend wagers to daily 5-figure bets on everything from college basketball to European soccer matches. The final blow had come through cryptocurrency speculation. Marcus had convinced himself that his gambling wins qualified him as an investment expert, and had borrowed heavily against company assets to buy digital currencies at their peak values. When the market crashed, he doubled down, using money from the company's equipment replacement fund to try recovering his losses. $126,000 had vanished from Henderson Construction's business accounts over 8 months. The money was earmarked for replacing aging equipment essential for upcoming commercial projects. Excavators, concrete mixers, and specialized tools that were scheduled for delivery next month to meet contract deadlines were now impossible to purchase. "The bank denied our loan application," Dad explained, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "Marcus's gambling debts showed up on background checks, and our creditworthiness has been destroyed. We have 3 major projects starting in 6 weeks, and without that equipment, we'll default on every contract." The legal implications were terrifying. Defaulting on commercial construction contracts would trigger penalty clauses worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The company's reputation would be destroyed overnight, making future work impossible to secure. Worse yet, criminal charges for project abandonment and breach of contract could result in prison time for Dad as the company owner. Mom's health had deteriorated under the stress. She had suffered a mild heart attack 2 weeks earlier when Dad discovered the full extent of Marcus's theft and deception. She was home from the hospital but fragile, on medications, and facing the possibility of losing everything they had worked their entire lives to build. "Your mother asks about you every day," Dad said quietly. "She keeps saying she should have defended you when you left. She blames herself for what happened to our family." The family's financial situation was even worse than the business crisis. Their house was mortgaged to secure business loans. Retirement savings had been depleted to cover operating expenses. Insurance policies had been borrowed against to pay Marcus's initial gambling debts before Dad knew what was happening. Marcus himself was a wreck, alternating between pathetic apologies and angry demands that the family bail him out of his self-created disaster. He had checked himself into rehabilitation programs twice, but left both within days, claiming the counselors didn't understand the pressure he was under as heir to the family business. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything," Dad continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but you're the only person we know who might have the resources to help save the business and keep your mother from losing everything." $126,000 was exactly what Dad needed to replace the equipment and meet contract deadlines. It was also more money than Henderson Construction had ever held in liquid assets at one time. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. My filthy photography business had made me more financially successful than the real work Dad had always championed. But the cruelest twist was still to come. During our conversation, I learned that Marcus's gambling addiction had included a particularly vindictive element. He had specifically bet against my business success in underground gambling circles, convinced that his worthless younger brother would fail spectacularly and be forced to crawl back to the family for forgiveness. Marcus had literally gambled away the family fortune while betting that I wouldn't succeed in my career. The money he stole was lost, in part, on wagers that mountain light photography would fail within 2 years. His faith in Dad's assessment of my abilities had been so complete that he had put money on my failure even as my Instagram following and corporate clients grew exponentially. The phone call ended with Dad begging me to consider helping, not for his sake or Marcus's, but for Mom's health and the 12 employees who would lose their jobs if Henderson Construction collapsed. "I'll do anything you ask," he said. "I'll sign any agreement, accept any conditions. I just need to save what's left of what we built." As I sat in my home office after hanging up, surrounded by award-winning photographs and evidence of the success Dad had once dismissed as impossible, I realized that 5 years of pain and rejection had led to this moment. The man who had destroyed my acceptance letters, sabotaged my early career, and called my life's work filthy, was now completely dependent on my financial mercy. The power dynamic between us had reversed entirely, and the decision about how to use that power would define not just our relationship, but the kind of man I had become despite his cruelty. Jennifer found me in my office the next morning, staring out the window at the Flatirons while my coffee grew cold in my hands. I had been awake all night, processing Dad's desperate phone call and the impossible situation it presented. She sat down across from my desk and waited patiently for me to explain what had shattered my usual morning routine. "He wants me to save the business he threw me out of for pursuing the career that's now successful enough to save it," I finally said, summarizing the twisted irony of the situation. $126,000 to replace equipment that Marcus gambled away, including money he bet against my success. Jennifer listened without judgment as I explained the full scope of the family crisis. Her marketing background had taught her to analyze complex situations objectively, looking for solutions rather than getting trapped in emotional reactions. "What do you want to do?" she asked simply. That question had kept me awake all night. Part of me wanted revenge for 5 years of pain, sabotage, and rejection. Dad had earned every ounce of suffering he was experiencing. He had actively tried to destroy my career, stolen opportunities from me, and treated me like an enemy for pursuing my dreams. Now he was facing the consequences of putting all his faith in a son who had proved spectacularly unworthy of that trust. But another part of me, the part that Jennifer had helped nurture, understood the difference between justice and vengeance. Allowing Henderson Construction to collapse wouldn't just hurt Dad and Marcus. It would destroy Mom's health and financial security, eliminate jobs for 12 innocent employees, and abandon the clients who were counting on completed projects. I keep thinking about what kind of man I want to be, I admitted. Do I want to be someone who kicks people when they're down, even if they deserve it? Or do I want to be someone who helps when they have the power to make a difference? Jennifer smiled at that response. Those are the words of someone who's already made his decision. Now you just need to figure out how to help on your terms instead of theirs. Over the following days, I conducted my own investigation into Henderson Construction's situation. My network of successful clients included lawyers, accountants, and business consultants who could analyze the company's books and legal standing. What I discovered was both worse and better than Dad had described. The financial crisis was real and immediate. Without equipment replacement, the company would definitely default on major contracts within 2 months. Criminal charges and bankruptcy were virtually guaranteed without intervention. Mom's health was indeed deteriorating under the stress, and her medical bills were adding to the family's financial burden. However, the underlying business was still viable with proper management. Henderson Construction had a solid reputation for quality work, established relationships with suppliers and subcontractors, and a skilled workforce. The company's problems were entirely due to Marcus's theft and gambling addiction, not fundamental business issues. More importantly, I realized that Dad's desperation created an opportunity to restructure the business relationship on terms that would prevent future disasters while protecting everyone involved. This wasn't just about loaning money, it was about creating accountability and ensuring the family learned from their mistakes. My business attorney helped me draft a comprehensive proposal that addressed both immediate needs and long-term stability. The terms were strict but fair, designed to save Henderson Construction while protecting my interests and ensuring genuine change in family dynamics. Meanwhile, Dad called twice more, each conversation more desperate than the last. Legal deadlines were approaching, and project start dates couldn't be postponed without triggering penalty clauses. Mom had been hospitalized again, this time for anxiety-related heart palpitations that doctors worried could lead to more serious cardiac events. Marcus had tried reaching out directly through social media and email, alternating between pathetic apologies and entitled demands. His messages revealed a complete lack of understanding about the consequences of his actions. He seemed to think the family crisis was just bad luck rather than the predictable result of his gambling addiction and theft. The most painful part was a handwritten letter that arrived from Mom, delivered by a mutual family friend who had maintained contact despite the years of estrangement. Mom's careful cursive handwriting covered 3 pages of heartfelt regret and love, explaining how she had replayed our last family dinner thousands of times, wishing she had found the courage to defend me against Dad's ultimatum. I should have told your father that photography was a beautiful career and that we should be proud of your artistic talents, she wrote. I should have protected my son instead of staying silent to keep peace. I pray every night that someday you'll forgive a foolish mother who chose wrong when it mattered most. The letter didn't directly ask for financial help, but it made clear how much the family's collapse was affecting her health and happiness. She mentioned being proud of my success, following my work through social media, and hoping that someday we could rebuild our relationship regardless of what happened with the business crisis. Reading Mom's words broke down the last of my resistance to getting involved. She had been trapped between Dad's stubborn pride and her own fear of conflict, but she had never stopped loving me or believing in my worth. If I could help save her health and financial security while teaching Dad and Marcus important lessons about accountability, then involvement was worth the emotional risk. The final twist came when my investigation revealed that Henderson Construction's recent struggles weren't entirely due to Marcus's gambling. Dad had been turning down profitable projects specifically because the clients were connected to my professional network. His pride had been so wounded by my success that he preferred potential bankruptcy to admitting that his worthless son had valuable business connections. Several luxury home builders, resort developers, and commercial property companies had tried to hire Henderson Construction after seeing my photography of their projects. Dad had refused every opportunity, claiming he didn't want to profit from his son's mistakes. His stubborn refusal to acknowledge my success had cost the company hundreds of thousands in potential revenue, making Marcus's theft even more devastating. That discovery crystallized my decision. Dad needed to learn not just about managing Marcus's addiction and protecting company assets, but also about recognizing and respecting my achievements. Any help I provided would have to include acknowledgement of my professional success and the value of what he had once dismissed as filthy nonsense. The terms I would offer were designed to save Henderson Construction, while fundamentally changing how the family operated. This wasn't charity or forgiveness. It was a business transaction with personal accountability requirements that would force everyone involved to grow beyond their previous limitations. Dad's next phone call was scheduled for the following morning. I would present my offer then, knowing that his response would determine not just the company's survival, but whether our family could ever find a path toward genuine reconciliation. The meeting took place at Henderson Construction's office on a gray Thursday morning in late March. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in my car, looking at the building where I had spent countless childhood afternoons watching Dad review blueprints and coordinate projects. The company logo painted on the front window looked faded and tired, much like the man who emerged to unlock the front door. Dad had aged dramatically since I last saw him. His hair was completely gray now, his shoulders stooped under the weight of stress and failure. When he saw me walking toward the entrance, his eyes filled with tears that he quickly tried to hide by looking down at his keys. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly, his voice carrying none of the commanding authority I remembered from childhood. "I wasn't sure you would." Inside the office, Marcus sat at the conference table looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 months. His face was gaunt, his hands shook slightly, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who had lost everything and knew it was his own fault. When I entered the room, he couldn't meet my gaze. "Before we discuss anything," I began, setting my folder of documents on the table, "I need you both to understand something. I'm not here as your son or your brother. I'm here as a successful business owner who might be willing to make a strategic investment in Henderson Construction. This conversation will be conducted professionally, with legal agreements and clear expectations." Dad nodded eagerly, desperate to hear any terms that might save his life's work. Marcus remained silent, staring at the table. "I've had my attorneys and accountants review your situation completely," I continued. "Henderson Construction is viable with proper management and oversight. However, the current leadership structure has failed catastrophically, and any investment I make must include fundamental changes to prevent future disasters." I opened my folder and distributed copies of the comprehensive agreement I had prepared. "I'm willing to provide a loan of $126,000 at 5% annual interest to be repaid over 5 years. This will cover immediate equipment needs and allow you to meet contract obligations." Dad's relief was visible, but I held up my hand before he could speak. "However, this loan comes with non-negotiable conditions that address the underlying problems that created this crisis." The first condition was Marcus's complete removal from any financial decision-making role in the company. He would enter a residential rehabilitation program for gambling addiction, followed by a probationary period working as a laborer for minimum wage. His salary would be deposited directly into a managed account, with access limited to basic living expenses until he demonstrated 2 years of responsible financial behavior. "Marcus will learn the business from the ground up," I explained, starting with the physical work that builds character and understanding of what construction actually involves. If he successfully completes rehabilitation and proves he can handle responsibility, he can gradually earn back decision-making authority. But he will never again have unsupervised access to company funds. Marcus finally looked up, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "You can't treat me like a child, Levi. I made mistakes, but I'm still part of this family. You stole over $100,000 and nearly destroyed a business that employs 12 people, I replied calmly. "You're lucky you're not in prison. These terms are designed to help you rebuild your life and earn back trust. You can accept them and start recovery, or you can find another way to solve the legal problems you've created." The second condition addressed Dad's management of the company and his treatment of my professional success. He would sign a formal acknowledgement of my achievements and publicly state that Mountain Light Photography was a legitimate, successful business that he respected and supported. Furthermore, Henderson Construction would actively pursue projects connected to my professional network instead of rejecting them out of stubborn pride. "I want you to understand something clearly," I told Dad, looking directly into his eyes. My photography business generates more annual revenue than Henderson Construction ever has. The clients you've been refusing to work with because of your prejudice against my career represent millions of dollars in potential projects. Your pride has been more expensive than Marcus's gambling. Dad's face went pale as he absorbed the financial implications of his bias. For 5 years, he had been sabotaging not just my career but also his own business prospects, because he couldn't admit that photography was a legitimate profession. The third condition established ongoing oversight and business consultation. I would serve as an unofficial advisor to Henderson Construction, helping modernize their marketing approach and connecting them with high-end clients who valued both quality construction and professional presentation. In exchange, the company would use mountain light photography for all their marketing materials and project documentation. This creates a mutually beneficial business relationship, I explained. Henderson Construction gains access to my professional network and marketing expertise. Mountain light photography gains a construction partner for clients who need both services. We both profit, but only if we work together respectfully. The final condition was the most important: full transparency and family accountability. Monthly family meetings would review both business performance and personal recovery progress. Marcus's rehabilitation, Dad's acknowledgement of past mistakes, and the company's financial health would be discussed openly. No more secrets, no more lies, and no more pretending that problems don't exist. This isn't just about saving your business, I concluded. This is about rebuilding our family relationships on a foundation of honesty, respect, and mutual accountability. If you can't commit to that level of change, then this investment isn't worth the risk. Dad signed the agreement without hesitation, his hands trembling as he wrote his name. Marcus took longer, arguing about the terms and trying to negotiate easier conditions, but eventually signed when Dad threatened to let the company collapse rather than enable more gambling behavior. Over the following months, the transformation was remarkable. Marcus entered a 90-day residential program in Colorado Springs, where he finally faced the psychological issues underlying his addiction. The combination of group therapy, financial counseling, and manual labor helped him understand how his sense of entitlement and fear of failure had driven his destructive choices. Henderson Construction's equipment was replaced immediately, allowing the company to meet contract deadlines and avoid bankruptcy. Dad threw himself into learning modern business practices, attending workshops on digital marketing and customer relationship management. For the first time in his career, he actively sought advice and acknowledged that his old-fashioned approaches needed updating. The collaboration between Henderson Construction and Mountain Light Photography exceeded both our expectations. Luxury home builders loved having a construction team that understood the importance of visual presentation and a photographer who understood building processes. Projects were documented professionally throughout the construction process, creating marketing materials that helped both companies attract higher-end clients. Dad's public acknowledgement of my success was awkward but genuine. He placed framed photographs from my award wins in the Henderson Construction office and started telling clients about his talented photographer son who helped market their completed projects. The man who had once called photography filthy now proudly displayed my work and bragged about my professional achievements. The monthly family meetings were difficult at first, filled with old resentments and uncomfortable truths. But gradually, honest communication replaced the silence and pretense that had poisoned our relationships for years. Marcus acknowledged the selfishness and entitlement that had driven his gambling addiction. Dad admitted his narrow-mindedness and the damage caused by his inability to respect different definitions of success. Mom's health improved dramatically once the family stress decreased and financial security returned. She became the emotional anchor for our rebuilt relationships, facilitating conversations and celebrating small victories in everyone's recovery process. Seeing her happiness made all the difficult negotiations and legal complexities worthwhile. 1 year after the crisis, Henderson Construction had not only survived but was thriving. The company's revenue had increased 40% through connections to my client network. Marcus had completed rehabilitation and was working steadily as a project supervisor, earning back trust through consistent responsible behavior. Dad had embraced modern business practices and was genuinely excited about the company's future prospects. Jennifer and I were married that spring in a ceremony that perfectly combined our professional skills with personal celebration. Marcus served as my best man, a gesture of forgiveness that meant more to him than any financial rescue. Dad officiated the ceremony as a licensed minister, something he had become qualified for specifically to help rebuild our family bonds. The wedding was photographed by one of my professional competitors, a decision that symbolized how success had given me the confidence to celebrate others' talents rather than jealously guarding my own opportunities. Seeing my former rival's excellent work displayed at my own wedding proved that abundance thinking had replaced the scarcity mentality that had once driven family competition and conflict. As I stood at the altar, looking at Jennifer in her perfect dress and surrounded by family members who had learned to respect and support each other despite our painful history, I realized that Dad's original cruelty had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible: the motivation to build something beautiful entirely on my own terms. The business I created from nothing had not only provided financial freedom, but it also taught me that true success isn't measured by proving others wrong. It's measured by maintaining your integrity and values, even when you have the power to seek revenge. Family bonds can be rebuilt when people are willing to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to genuine growth. Henderson Construction now displays my photography awards prominently in their lobby, and Dad regularly tells clients about his brilliant photographer son who helps document their dream homes. The man who once threw away my acceptance letters now keeps every magazine cover featuring my work in a scrapbook he shows to anyone willing to listen. Sometimes the biggest victory isn't defeating your enemies, but helping them become better people than they knew they could be. Have you ever had to choose between revenge and reconciliation when someone who hurt you desperately needed your help? How did you decide what kind of person you wanted to be in that moment? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and building success on your own terms. Share this video with anyone who might need encouragement to pursue their dreams despite family opposition. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to believe that your dreams are worth fighting for, no matter who doubts them along the way.